Welcome, everyone. This is I Need Living Conversations. We are live right now. I am Julian Katari, and I get together with Blue Heron Women each week, and we have this conversation. We covered whole different types of subjects, topics, all related to freedom, to sovereignty, and to holistic health and holistic living, and the rise of a new humanity. And this week, we have freedom economy. This is kind of a subject that we might have treaded on before, but I'm pretty sure that there's something new about this topic that we're seeing this week. Why did you choose to speak about this week, Blue Heron Woman?
Because with all the tariffs and everything going on in our wonderful
Okay.
United States world, it's really important to get a different perception.
Of what economy is. Yeah, so it's good to be on the trend, or at least what's buzzing around, to give that other. I like that you wanted to give another view of everything, and I hope this can get to somebody. And if you're watching this, please help us share it so other people can also reach this view, this other perspective on economy, because we got it all turned around what economy is.
Yeah, we do.
It's like we have no idea what economy should be or is, really.
Yeah, we don't. And that's one of the apprenticeships we're offering through the Owl Council House, Udallville apprenticeship programs. We have four ways you can come into this. Number one is you come in as a apprentice for the self-provisioning freedom economy, to lead that way forward. Or you come in as an apprentice for the hunter-gatherer, and that there's a whole lot. Don't just think you're going to go out. Yeah, that's a big part of it, is going out and walking the property and learning the woods. You're not going to put a deer stand and put corn and sit there and wait for them to come in. You're going to go out and get to learn. But there's a whole lot more. You're going to be a woodsman. There's a whole lot more to that apprenticeship. And then there's the agricultural animal husbandry. And why have I kind of switched to this? Because a geophysicist named Stefan Burns has talking about what's going on up there, and all the satellites that are decaying up there and that are causing Pachamama, Tierra Madre, Gaia, to her tectonic plates to shift and move. He said the only way he can see forward for humanity to survive is to go back to the Paleolithic, which was hunter-gatherer. Let's go back. Let's do it.
And we can take all the knowledge we have with us.
Exactly, but we can incorporate hunter-gatherer with agricultural animal husbandry, right? And again, and then there's the fourth, is to be a volunteer too, or part-timer. You don't want to commit fully. You want to see what it's all about. Just come and join us part-time.
Amazing. So this is the options available for you to begin to be part of a project that seeks to create a new humanity. Isn't that the most exciting thing that you could ever think of?
Well, and what are Udallvilles? They are the funnest places to live, play, and maybe work.
Yeah.
Right?
Which in the Maya cosmology, it's all represented by the number 5, where work and play are there's no difference. It's the same energy.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, it's the modern civilization, that the slavery model that got us into that separation of work is one thing and fun is another thing. When
yes, absolutely.
In a natural entourage, you get out and you start doing stuff. You go with the animals, go with the plants. You build stuff. You cook stuff. That's the fun.
Yeah. Well, and it's the Toltec way is also the path of heart. And if you're following the path of heart, you're going to have fun. It's not drudgery. It's not getting up and working for 12 hours in the blazing hot sun to pave over
Right. And because it's coming from a freedom economy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and you're going to tell us about that, but so what's this freedom economy about then?
Well, by common understanding, an affluent or rich society in which is one in which all people's material wants are easily satisfied. It's pretty damn simple. Do we see any affluent society in America or Mexico or Argentina or Costa Rica or anywhere?
No.
No. No. No. There wouldn't be a homeless problem. There would, yeah. So we won't get off on that tangent. So why did we come to abandon Paleolithic? And Stefan Burns, the geophysicist, was like, "Oh my God, we got to go back to Paleolithic."
Yeah, it makes it sound like it's a bad thing, and you just got to get out of that mindset too.
Exactly. Why did we abandon the Paleolithic affluence and actually create a world in which most of us live lives of scarcity? Perhaps the answer lies in the social organization of production. For most of human history, the primary unit of production has been the household. In Europe and Russia, peasant farmer households tend to deploy labor in such a way as to guarantee that what its members can consider to be a decent standard of living is for all the members, not just one of them. Right? All their members. So in doing so, they tend to distribute tasks within the household more by a sense of equity than efficiency. And once they attain the minimally decent level, they stop working and enjoy themselves. But no, we got to go beyond, right? That's the American way. We got to go beyond, because if my store shelves are not full and busting at the seams, nobody's going to want to come in and buy from me. I got to go beyond. God forbid I should stop and enjoy myself. And it's all over. When I was working on my MBA, even through Maharishi University, started by the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, I actually, during the course on human resources, I think I actually had to get up and go to the bathroom and puke because it was so disgusting about how to make humans more efficient at producing more and more and more and more. And they and they're buying into this as a spiritual okayness. And that's right. So yeah, it's I'll get off that, but we need to look at stuff like that straight in the face and say we're not doing that no more.
Right.
So let's say that again. In Europe and Russia, the peasant farmer households deploy labor in such a way as to guarantee that what its members consider to be a decent standard of life, they do so for all their members, not just one. So in doing so, they tend to distribute tasks within, and the way old Germany worked, the way my mother was raised, the entire family, grandparents lived in the first floor level. The kids lived, the grandkids, right? The entire extended family lived in under one roof. So everyone got the same standard of living by doing the same amount of work. So they would distribute the tasks within the household for a sense of equity, more by a sense of equity than efficiency. And once they attained their minimally decent level, they stopped working. They didn't care about the surplus. There's times when you face winter that you have to care about the surplus. So there's going to be a time where you got to buckle it up, so to speak, but not every day, 40 hours to 80 hours a week. So the human proclivity to enjoy leisure to great instead of greater wealth lasted a very long time. what has led us to change our minds about this? Why are we seeking greater wealth of this substance called money as opposed to leisure?
Some think that money leads to leisure somehow.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Within the domestic mode of production, the only pressures to increase output were typically political. So in the absence of a state power, however, there is a decided limit on how much these would-be potentiates could extract. Householders quickly developed standards for what was a reasonable level of production. In Hawaii, if rulers tried to go beyond that, they were simply killed. So once we have the state and people acquiesce to the state, we have a different problem. So there are two possible courses to affluence. Wants may be easily satisfied either by producing much or desiring little. An observation has been made that in poor nations, the people are comfortable, while in rich nations, the people are generally poor. Because they're generally poor in the fact that they only give a shit about themselves and their personal little hoard of wealth. And oh my God, if I give to you of that, it might take away from me. So modern capitalist societies, however richly endowed, dedicate themselves to the proposition of scarcity. Inadequacy of economic means is the first principle of the world's wealthiest people. The market industrial system institutes scarcity in a manner completely unparalleled and to a degree nowhere else approximated. Where production and distribution are arranged through the behavior of prices, and all livelihoods depend on getting and spending, insufficiency of material means becomes the explicit, calculable starting point of all economic activity. So insufficiency, scarcity, and that is what the study of economics is the study of scarcity.
Okay.
In the game of consumer free choice, and that's right on their website. So in the game of consumer free choice, every acquisition is simultaneously a deprivation, for every purchase of something is a foregoing of something else. Because it's our duality of both and. We can't get into the triality of both and more, right? Because we got to make one thing so fucking expensive we can't afford the other. Got to be constantly a either or. But in a freedom self-production economy, it's both and we can have more. Both and beyond. The Bushmen who live in the Kalahari in Africa enjoy a kind of material plenty because they adopted the tools of their living to materials which lay around them in abundance and were free to anyone to take. Some would say the hunter-gatherer societies were uneconomic. Their wants were scarce and their means were plentiful. So they were free of material pressures without a sense of possession. They didn't curb the material impulses, they just didn't make an institution of them. We are inclined to think of the hunter-gatherers as poor because they don't have anything. They don't need to rent a storage shed.
To just store things they don't use, yeah. That's the craziest thing in the world.
I know, right? Perhaps
those you know those don't kind of exist here in Mexico.
You don't have all the storage facilities?
No, they don't exist. Nobody.
Wow.
Nobody owns more than what they use. I mean, we don't own what we need. Like there's stuff we need can't yet buy. I mean, a lot of people.
Right. So So their extremely limited material possessions relieve them of all cares with regard to daily necessities and permit them to enjoy life. Their economy was not physically demanding, and they paced themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that again. They paced themselves. There is nothing about working a 12-hour day, paving over Mother Earth and creating air bridges that is pacing yourself. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing about that. That's pacing yourself. And that's what I discovered when I was doing my MBA with Maharishi in the human resources. That's what made me was like, gag. Oh my God, seriously? Nothing about pacing yourself. A pristine affluence colors their economic arrangements, a trust in the abundance of nature's resources rather than despair at the inadequacy of human means. Oh, a trust in the abundance of nature's resources. They weren't worried by what tomorrow may bring because as far as they are concerned, it will bring more of the same, another feast. That's hummingbird, spirit keeper of the north. I finally, as I've told you, I finally discovered that. Marinating in the beauty rather than what's not, right? It will bring more of the same, but we'd like to go to worst case scenarios. So their lives lack neither excitement or pleasure. And that's what we all want, right? What about the world today? 1/3 to 1/2 of humanity are said to go to bed hungry every night. 1/3 to 1/2. That's a lot. Now, in the time of the greatest technical power, starvation has become an institution. The world's most primitive people have few possessions, but they are not poor. Poverty is not a certain small amount of goods, nor is it a relation, just a relation between means and ends. Above all, it is a relation between people, and in that we are extremely freaking poor because we don't associate with each other.
Wow.
Poverty is a social status, and it is an invention of civilization. It was not until culture neared the height of its material achievements that it erected a shrine to the unattainable infinite needs. Primitive economies are underproductive. Maybe we need to reframe it a primitive freedom economy. All the material wants in an underproductive, all the material wants, people's material wants are still easily satisfied, even though the economy is running below capacity. Their labor forces are also underused. It is an economy of concrete and limited objectives. The people take pride in their ability to estimate their immediate personal consumption needs and produce just enough to satisfy them. Okay, so when we live in snow territory, yes, we got to produce enough that takes us through the winter until we can start producing again. But the GDP is way the fuck beyond that. Way the fuck beyond that. It is an economy of production for use. For the livelihood of the producers, not for the stockholders. Economy for them is a function of the society rather than the structure of the society. The households of primitive communities remain constant in their pursuit of use values. Relation always to gifting with an interest in use, so the production with an interest in provisioning. Rather than just stupid shit to make you buy. So that you can go rent a storage facility to store it with.
It doesn't make sense.
I know, right? And we so buy into that. God bless the American dream of having a storage facility to store all your shit that you don't even want. For the greater, this is coyote medicine. You got to laugh at yourself.
Yeah. Of course, you got to laugh at the things that are terrible. I mean, this one's kind of funny. I've laughed at really bad things because it's the medicine that, yeah.
Yeah. So for the greater part of human history, labor has been far more significant than tools. The intelligent efforts of the producer were more decisive than his simple equipment. The entire history of labor, then, until very recently, has been a history of skilled labor. Only an industrial system could survive on the population of unskilled workers that now exists. Up to the time of the true Industrial Revolution, the product of human labor probably increased much more in return to the worker's skill than the perfection of his tools. And now we're all about the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Production for use and the production of exchange. That's the difference. That's what a self-provisioning freedom economy is all about, is production for use. One is an economic system of determinate and finite objectives, while the other holds out the indefinite goal of as much as possible. Production, and let me tell you what as much as possible does. It brings me 1,200 pounds of organic bananas to feed to my pigs, 1,000 pounds of tomatoes from Mexico to feed to my pigs, a ton of bread that went past its expiration date to feed to my pigs. This is what as much as possible does. It produces such an excess that we produce so much freaking trash, and yet people are still, half of our world is still going hungry every night. Are we about done with this picture? Production for use seeks merely to reproduce itself, with production for exchange constantly seeking to exceed itself, the accumulation of an abstract wealth. Absolutely abstract, which is just numbers in a computer. That's all their abstract wealth is. Production for use is discontinuous and irregular and sparing of labor power. Production of use values definite in its aims is discontinuous in its activity. I'm going to have to sit with that sentence. The household in tribal societies is usually not the exclusive owner of its resource farmlands, pastures, hunting, or fishing territories. The producers determine on a day-to-day basis how the land should be used. That's the dehesa. And to them, or the maraka. And to them falls the priority of appropriation and disposition of the product. There is no class of landless paupers. In production for exchange, the concept is that a good is given in order to receive its equivalent in return. There is an equation of value, quantification, and measurement. In production for use and gift giving, one gives to satisfy the need of another, and the creativity of the receiver in using the gift is as important as the creativity of the giver. The gift interaction is transitive, and the product passes from one person to another, creating a relation of inclusion, not exclusion, between the giver and the receiver with regard to what is giving. Gift giving implies the value of the other, while the exchange transaction, which is made to satisfy one's own need, implies the value only of oneself. Let me say that again. Gift giving, when you give a gift, you're valuing the other. Whereas when you're doing it for exchange, you're valuing only yourself. And Don Juan was big about, with Carlos Castaneda, about the need to lose the sense of self-importance. Gift giving is other-oriented rather than ego-oriented, and it's inclusive rather than exclusive. It's relation-creating and so creates community, while exchange is an adversarial interaction that creates atomistic individuals. Atomistic. Single atom. We consider ourselves human capital. We choose our mate on the marriage market. We base justice on paying for crimes. We motivate wars through reprisal and teeter on the brink of nuclear exchanges. Justice is seen as payment for crimes and framed according to the exchange paradigm, while identifying and satisfying the needs that gave rise to the crimes is a gift-based approach. Colonization by the Europeans destroyed the civilizations of the Americas because the mechanisms of patriarchal capitalism, which were developing in Europe throughout the preceding centuries, needed sources of free gifts, which could be transformed into capital. In the capitalist patriarchy, the practice of the gift economy has been assigned, especially to women, though it has been misrecognized specifically under the name of mothering, nurturing, and caregiving. The exchange economy fosters competition, while the gift economy fosters, or the self-provisioning freedom economy, fosters cooperation. The economy of exchange, on which the patriarchal capitalist market is built, functions according to the self-reflecting logic of exchange. Giving in order to receive an equivalent. It requires an equation of value, quantification, and measurement according to a standard. Whereas gift giving or self-provisioning directly satisfies the needs of the other and functions according to a logical movement of its own and is instinctual and illogical. Giving in order to receive an equivalent in return actually cancels gift giving. It's ego-oriented and gives value to the giver by implication rather than the receiver. It is competitive and positions the exchangers as adversaries and creates a relation between products rather than person. Mothering, which is usually socially identified with women, is an example of gift giving in which goods are distributed in needs in a very detailed and continuous way. This distribution could be an example of an economic structure which has the capacity to give rise to the values of care as its superstructure. In societies based on gift economies, men remain mothering. To be a leader for the Minangkabau in Malaysia, a man must be like a good mother. Mm-hmm. The values of care can be seen as the superstructure of the gift economy. The values of self-interest can be seen as the superstructure deriving from the economic structure of exchange. The logic of gift giving is a maternal economic logic, while the logic of the distribution of goods and services directly to needs is and it's not even directly to needs. Oh, well, and that is the logic of the mother gift economy, is that it's a distribution of the gift to the needs. And that's what, when we were talking about the Chicago School Economic Program, mm-hmm. with all the NGOs, they never give. And even now, I can tell you, I have friends that have worked in the big veterans organizations, and they quit because they can't even just hand out a blanket. Wow. For someone in need. And that's what the lady who wrote the book that I read was like. The people are sitting on their stuff saying, just give us some, we can pick up and move on our own. We don't need the NGOs. Just give us what we need. Give it directly to us. And that's what a self-provisioning economy does. Mm. Mm-hmm. The gift economy gives not only mothers, but men and everyone who does not have a small child a chance to continue to distribute goods to need socially as well as individually. Why am I not calling this a gift economy? Because people are so shrinking back from a gift economy.
Mhm.
Everyone I've talked to is like, whoa, get out of my face with a gift economy. So that's why I'm calling it a self-provisioning freedom economy.
Okay.
The struggles for territory among nations can be seen as the attempts on patriarchalist as the patriarchal capitalist parasite to control the gift resources of another. Abundance is necessary for the successful practice of gift giving. Exchange competes with gift giving by capturing the abundance, channeling it into the hands of the few, or wasting it. That's what I'm telling you, I've seen with our food industry, is all the wastage. It's just been shocking to me. So exchange competes with gift giving by capturing the abundance and channels it into the hands of those who actually need it. That's not exchange, sorry. Exchange gives it to the few while mothering the gift. Self-provisioning gives it to those who actually need it. Procuring and providing something that satisfies the needs of others is part of a dynamic which gives not only material satisfaction, but gives value to the other by implication. The receiver is as important as the giver in the gift transaction because she or he must be able to use the gift to bring it to fruition. In exchange, one gives in order to procure the satisfaction of one's own need and therefore gives value to oneself above the other, implying one's own value. So in exchange, let me say that again, in our current exchange economy, one gives in order to procure the satisfaction of one's own need, giving value to one's own self above anybody else. And that's when you say, well, my labor is worth $20 an hour. You're only valuing yourself. Only. Those words, Gay, have given me large pause for thought. Because I don't ever want to imply only my own value.
Mhm.
I'm here because you are. That's the Ubuntu from Africa, right? That's Aini, reciprocity, Mother Earth. The ley line of the from east to west is nothing ever flows in one direction, but in the exchange, it always flows in one direction to those who can charge the most and talk you into paying the most for their services.
Mhm.
The binary procedure of exchange, in which there is a symmetrical interaction of two ego-oriented exchangers, also takes attention away from the original source of the goods. Each of the interactors in exchange is implying his or her own value by using the satisfaction of the need of the other as a means, and at the same time is evaluating the value of the commodity relative to other commodities on the market by using money so that the exchange will be equal. The value of the other is no longer implied by the satisfaction of his or her need, rather by the satisfaction of how quickly can I make them fill a storage unit. I didn't say that again. But at most, the value of identity of the two exchangers is attested by the identity of the value of their product. In other words, the identity of value of the product implies the identity of the exchangers. They're belonging to the same category because of their common property of the quantity of exchange value. However, this value depends on the logic of identity, on what they have, and therefore what category they belong to, what caste system they belong to, not on an implication of value transmitted by or to them as human givers and receivers of need-satisfying goods. Where unilateral gift-giving creates other orientation, Bonding, trust, and mutuality exchange create ego orientation and adversarial position, suspicion, and hostility, or detachment as the exchanger tries to surreptitiously make the other give more in the supposedly equal exchange. The categorical identity of the exchangers gives rise to their indifference to each other, in that anyone can substitute for anybody else in their roles. That takes me right to a big car sales lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a prime example of it, but it's everywhere. It's there in nursing, it's there in the MD profession, it's everywhere. In gift giving, the interactors give and receive in a personal way according to their individual capacities and needs. The attention of givers to the needs of others, to needs, create sensitivity to the other. Human reasoning seems to, and that's just where we're in our economy. It's what niche can I fill? What can I convince you to buy that you need for your house? It's not what do you actually need. There's never given any thought to what do you actually need.
Mm-hmm.
Human reasoning seems to depend upon categorization, identity, and evaluation, not on the transmission of value. Inclusiveness comes through giving to the other, attending to his or her needs, not primarily by being classified as similar to or different from the other. It is that we create community. We create community by giving and receiving gifts at all levels, not by being classified as similar or different from each other. Communication with words, which is an important human capability, begins in each life between mother or other primary caregiver and child, and is deeply connected to gift giving. Indeed, giving goods to needs without an exchange can be considered material communication, in the sense that the bodies and minds of the receivers are created through this interaction, and they become the actual community members. Givers who are also receivers are altered and specified by their giving. The receivers are nurtured and brought into social life in specific ways, becoming givers in their turn. The vulnerability and dependence of human children requires others to give unilaterally to them in order to ensure their survival. This is why we look at the mother as the role model. Gift giving functions in mothering to imply the value of the child, but it also functions in reverse mode to encourage the mother to give to the child because the mother sees the child as valuable. And that's what gift giving, that's what self-provisioning economy, freedom economy does, is give value to the other for being part of a family. Not for what you do, just for being part of a family. So in patriarchy, it appears that in order to achieve their masculine identity, boys must not have the same behavior as their mothers. When children are small, the free satisfaction of their needs is met by their mothers, is a very large part of their existence. So the mandate to be unlike their mothers turns little boys away from a behavior which is critical for them at the time and which carries the logic of the gift. They are required to be non-mothering, non-gift giving in order to fulfill the gender identity which is imposed upon them by society at large. In indigenous cultures, especially matriarchies which have gift economies, the process of becoming male can be very different from the process in patriarchal cultures. And so the boy child does not have to give up gift giving in order to create his masculine identity. Different kinds of gifts and giving create different kinds of bonds between givers and receivers, and value is implied and passed then from person to person. Giving to and receiving from nature is practiced as sacred communication. When there is no market based on exchange, but the society as a whole functions by direct giving and receiving, there is continuity for both males and females with the caregiving and receiving that they learn from their mothers in infancy and on up. Conversely, the combination of patriarchy and the market creates an altered and alienated world, which is antithetical to mothering or gift giving. It declassifies it and exploits it, making it the behavior of an unvalued and non-category. So the kinds of behaviors and qualities, competition, domination, and greediness, fomented by patriarchal capitalism, have survival value in market economy. War is really the replay of the market on a different plane. The purpose of war appears to be not only to create the most killing exchanges so that more people of other nations will have to give their lives for their country, but the reward for winning is to capture the largest amount of resources and become the prototype country, the father of nations. Human history in the West has not really begun, because from the beginning of patriarchy until now, it has only been the history of an artificial parasitic male gender construction, which leaves out the agency for the rest of humanity. And it's an artificial male gender. I'm not hammering on males. I'm not devaluing males. It's an artificial construction, period. It's an artificial construct. It's like the Kevlar vest you put on, right, as a man. Especially male CEOs and female CEOs, they're the same. Right. Perhaps we should say it is the history of a disease which infects or destroys all healthy cultures it meets. Female communal agriculture provided an early model of a peaceful society without private property. They were egalitarian and consensus-based. And I want to say here, I just recently heard the term of dissensus used, which means, let's take, for instance, you're with a group hiking in the forest and you get lost. Consensus means you gather together and go, what do we do? And we take the best opinion. Dissensus means you send people out in each direction and come back to say, well, this is what I saw here, so which, right? A different perspective.
Wow.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's in this perspective that hopefully we can jump into, because just reading about it is not enough. We need
exactly.
We need to start practicing it, and that's why we're here, to share it with you.
So when you have enough and I have enough, our giving can take on a symbolic character. This is an economy for life, which values other than money are primary. It's time to give the gift of living for the ideals of peace, freedom, unity, and equality for all. The biggest thing lacking in our current paradigm is how that we are stealing from our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren, because we are not even thinking or allowing them the possibility of life. There's not one thing on the land that isn't necessary. There's not one person within community that isn't necessary, and no person is superior to another. Giving is the only way to be human, and if you don't know that giving is essential to survival, then you don't know how to be human yet. If we lead our lives by giving continuously, never thinking about what we might get back from it or using it as an exchange for something that we want somebody to do for us, our needs will never go unmet. Let me say that again. If we lead our lives by giving continuously and never thinking about what we might get back from it or using it as an exchange, our needs will never go unmet. The gift imagery is a worldview where the economic life is built on balance of human and environmental relations, a recognition of our interconnection and interdependencies, and the forward-looking use of resources to ensure future cycles of abundance, fertility, and the rebirth of all species. Its logic is in the rationality of care and responsibility to ensure collective survival and well-being, eco-social sustainability. The norm of the human is best embodied by the circulating individual whose logic of action and ethics is like that of an ideal mother, not an absent and judgmental father. And that is the God that all Judeo-Christians worship, is an absent and judgmental father. The God I grew up worshiping.
Mm-hmm.
Giving is the only way to be human. And if you don't know that gift giving is the only way to be human, then you don't know how to be human yet. Indigenous societies, that I just realized that comes from a German woman, and I've just been listening to a German comedian, and I didn't realize how much of my bluntness is my cultural inheritance, and that is that statement was absolutely coming from a cultural German. And it sounds judgmental, and it's not meant to be judgmental, and it's hard to describe that. It's just a blunt statement, and I think we're so used to not being blunt that we're so wondering about who we're, about offending somebody. That bluntness is like, oh my God, you're just being mean. No, I'm just being blunt. Now, I had a Mexican sister-in-law who was blunt, but she was blunt to be mean. And that has nothing to do with the culture. It was just so. Indigenous societies taught their kids that when they received something that they really cherished, that's the first thing they needed to give up, because community is to be cherished on that level. And if they didn't know how to give like that, they were poor. If we lead our lives by giving continuously, never thinking about what we might get back from it, our needs will never go unmet. And that's where we're going to end tonight, because we've gone on long enough. But next week we're going to continue with this, and we're going to go into the Sami, which are the Laplanders, the reindeer agriculturists, husbanders, and some other things.
Where are they from?
Finland, Denmark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, never heard of them. So what's it going to be? What's the title going to be?
We're just going to continue on with a self-provisioning freedom economy.
Okay, that's amazing. We're going to get into some new areas, new cultures. That's very fun. Alrighty, so this has been a good long one, and we'll keep the invitation for.
Well, it was long because I kept getting on my soapbox, but.
No, it's okay. It was within.
Yeah,
it was a good, thorough conversation.
I think it's kind of a global soapbox that if we were willing to really look at it, everyone would get on the same soapbox.
Yeah. Okay, so let's make the invitation for next week. That's the same time. Well, for Wednesday, this time we had to change to Thursday because my internet provider decided to do maintenance right now. On that hour, which is
God forbid. See, they didn't even think about asking you.
Why don't they? No, that doesn't happen here. No, they just, even with the electricity, they'll just cut it. This is not the U.S. It's very different down here. They'll just
it's the same thing in here in the U.S. They just cut it. They don't give a shit.
Well, I knew that some people, or I don't know, some states, or I don't know how it works, but they get sent a note, right? Because you can sue them if they cut it off, and people will sue them.
I haven't ever seen that here in Oklahoma. No,
I used to get in Eugene, like we will get this. I remember once we got this mail from the electric company. There's going to be a programmed shut off for whatever amount of time at this time, and that's the way they can get out of getting sued.
Yeah.
But maybe it's maybe it's in the cities. Maybe it's, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. No.
Here they'll just cut it off anyway.
Yeah. No.
And with the water is even worse. The light they'll cut off for a few hours sometimes, but the water they can cut it off for days, and they can leave the whole neighborhood for a week without water. And there you go. That's what we need, this freedom economy.
Yes.
So
that's what we need Uddelvilles for.
Yeah. We need this.
In Uddelvilles, there will never be water cut off or
shortage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least not without being prepared for it.
Exactly. Without notice that says, hey, we've got a big problem here. We're going to have to cut it off, and we're going to have to shut it down, and we need all the help we can get to restore it as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the invitation for next week, to continue this amazing journey of reaching freedom, of going into freedom, of trying to build these Uddelvilles, these self-sustaining marcas, and all the wisdom that has to go with that, because it's not just about go out there and do it. You actually have to learn a lot of things. You have to deconstruct a lot of things.
Yeah.
You have to relearn a lot of things that we've, like, you would see this villages in Colombia, and the pandemic came and they were using face masks in the village. So having the village is not enough. You need to have the education. You need to have
exactly, to not be fooled by
the system.
By the system, exactly.
Okay, so with that, we wish you waterfalls of blessings, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.